Your throat is burning. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. There's no pharmacy down the street, no doctor's office to call, no thermometer to check how bad it really is. For most of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical. This was a regular part of being alive. So what actually happened when someone got sick 50,000 years ago? Did they just suffer until it passed, or got worse? The answer is more complicated, and more human, than you'd expect. Start with the obvious assumption people make. Stone Age life was short, brutal, and medically helpless. There's some truth buried in that. Life expectancy at birth was low, often cited around 30 years. But that number is misleading. It's dragged down almost entirely by infant and child mortality. If you survived childhood, your odds of reaching 60 or beyond were far better than most people assume. Why does that matter here? Because it means ancient humans weren't simply dying the moment illness struck. They were surviving it, again and again, often without anything you'd recognize as medicine. In 1991, hikers in the Ötzi Alps found a frozen body that would change how we understand ancient health entirely. Researchers nicknamed him Ötzi, a man who died around 3300 BCE, preserved almost perfectly in ice for over 5,000 years. When scientists examined him, they found something striking. Ötzi had tattoos placed directly over joints affected by arthritis, on his lower back, his knees, his ankles. Many researchers, including those who conducted the original analysis, believe these weren't decoration. They may have been an early form of pain treatment, marking the exact points where his body hurt. Sit with that for a second. 5,000 years before acupuncture was formally documented in China, someone in the Alps may have already been needling, or in this case tattooing, specific points on the body to manage chronic pain. That's not guesswork. That's accumulated knowledge, tested and reapplied. And Otzi wasn't just managing pain. In his pouch, researchers found 2 pieces of birch fungus, strung on leather, deliberately carried. Birch polypore, it turns out, has natural antibacterial and antiparasitic properties. Later analysis of Ötzi's gut revealed whipworm eggs. He likely knew, or his community knew, that this particular fungus helped with intestinal parasites. He was carrying medicine. Real, targeted, self-selected medicine, 5,000 years ago. Now picture the scene. A small group, gathered near a fire that's burned low into glowing coals. One person lies wrapped in an animal hide, shivering despite the heat radiating beside them. Their breathing is shallow. Someone else, maybe an elder, kneels close, pressing a hand to their forehead, feeling for fever the same way you might check a child's temperature today. There's no diagnosis in the modern sense. No blood test, no chart. But there is pattern recognition, built from decades of watching illness move through a small, tightly bonded group. The elder has seen this before. They know which plants ease a fever, which roots calm a cough, which berries should never be eaten by someone already weak. This knowledge isn't written anywhere. It lives entirely in memory, passed mouth to mouth, generation to generation. Archaeologist Karen Hardy has spent years studying Neanderthal dental calculus, the hardened plaque preserved on ancient teeth. In a 2012 study, her team analyzed calculus from Neanderthal remains at El Sidrón in Spain, and found traces of chamomile and yarrow, 2 plants with no nutritional value but well-documented medicinal properties even today. Chamomile is anti-inflammatory. Yarrow has long been used to treat wounds and digestive issues. These weren't accidental ingestions. The Neanderthal individual studied had a dental abscess and signs of gastrointestinal illness. The plants matched the symptoms. Here's where it gets harder to dismiss as coincidence. This means self-medication using specific plants for specific ailments existed not just in early modern humans, but in an entirely separate hominin species, tens of thousands of years before agriculture, before writing, before anything we'd call civilization. So illness in the Stone Age wasn't met with blank helplessness. It was met with an entire, unwritten pharmacy, refined through trial, error, and observation across countless generations. Get it wrong once, and you learn. Get it wrong badly enough, and that knowledge dies with you, which means survivors were constantly filtering for what actually worked. But here's the counterintuitive twist. Illness in small foraging groups wasn't only a private medical event. It was a social one, and the social response may have mattered just as much as any plant remedy. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner has spent decades studying the Ötzi San people of the Kalahari, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies still practicing traditions closely resembling ancient life. Her research highlights something modern medicine often forgets. In small, interdependent bands, an individual's recovery was tied directly to the group's investment in them. Someone too sick to forage didn't simply go without food. Others shared. The group's survival depended on reciprocity, on the unspoken understanding that today's illness could be anyone's tomorrow. This wasn't charity in the modern, transactional sense. It was structural. Bands that didn't care for their sick and injured lost valuable knowledge, skill, and labor permanently. Bands that did often saw members recover and contribute again, sometimes for decades. There's archaeological evidence that pushes this even further back. At Shanidar Cave in Iraq, the remains of a Neanderthal individual, known as Shanidar I, showed an amputated forearm, a withered leg, partial blindness, and hearing loss, injuries that would have made him almost entirely dependent on others. And yet he survived for years, possibly decades, after sustaining these injuries. He couldn't have hunted, foraged effectively, or defended himself. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone decided his life was worth that ongoing cost. That single skeleton complicates the entire narrative of prehistoric life as a ruthless, every individual for themselves struggle. Care, it turns out, isn't a recent invention layered onto human evolution by civilization. It may be one of the conditions that made our survival as a species possible in the first place. Now mirror that against your own experience of being sick today. You likely have antibiotics within reach, a doctor a phone call away, diagnostic tools that can identify a pathogen down to its genetic sequence. And yet, in many modern environments, illness can also mean isolation. Working from a sealed bedroom, video calls instead of visitors, a culture that often treats sickness as an inconvenience to push through alone, medicated just enough to keep functioning. Your ancestors had none of your tools. No antibiotics, no imaging, no germ theory to explain what was actually happening inside the body. What they had instead was observation refined over thousands of years, a working pharmacy hidden in the landscape around them, and a social structure that treated your survival as the group's responsibility, not just your own. Your throat is burning. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. The medicine has changed almost beyond recognition. But the question your ancestors answered every time someone in their group fell ill, whether you're worth the cost of care, was settled long before recorded history began. The answer, again and again, was yes.